FBI Director Patel sat before the Senate, and from the first moment, it was clear this wasn't going to be a routine hearing. Every camera focused, every microphone live, every breath in the room felt heavy. The man at the center of it all wasn't just any witness. He was the nation's top law enforcement officer, a man who once pled the Fifth and later testified under immunity in a federal case. Now, that same man was being grilled about loyalty, law, and truth itself. The phrase, "you're under oath," hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't just a reminder, it was a warning. Because when someone in Patel's position hesitates under those words, it's not just about him.
The online MAGA right. And it was pushed and pushed and pushed that they had to release the files, they should release the files. And Donald Trump was asked on the campaign trail, should the Jeffrey Epstein files be released? And he said yes. Donald Trump comes into office, and Pam Bondi releases a small portion of the Epstein files that had primarily already been public. There's an uproar on the right and by many, many members of Congress about why the Epstein files were not being released. Pam Bondi says, she writes a memo or an email saying that she wants an explanation for why there aren't more files that are released within 24 hours and that within 2 weeks she intends to release them. Then the FBI spends tens of thousands of hours going through the files to redact them. Redact, obviously, what you would need to redact, which is the identification information and any other information about the victims. That lasts a couple months. All of a sudden, it goes quiet. It goes quiet. Suddenly, Congresswoman Luna and others who have been pushing so aggressively for the Epstein files to be released decide we're going to stay quiet. And all of a sudden, they're not released. Well, what do we learn next? Oh, we learn, actually, this whole right-wing conspiracy theory is BS. It is bogus, and Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. So now, all of a sudden, the Republicans who were so aggressively intent on releasing the Epstein files because they were going to be a huge, explosive story about Democrats involved with Jeffrey Epstein are quiet. So the irony of these Republicans accusing the Democrats now of only being interested in this is for political purposes is so thick that it is almost sucking us into the quicksand. But let's go a step further. Let's go a step further. Because now the cover-up is getting so deep and so intense that this committee, which has oversight over the Department of Justice and would ordinarily be the one that is doing this investigation, is running away from it. Why? Because Chairman Comer is the useful idiot who will do the cover-up for Donald Trump. And what does that mean? Oh, well, now there is an oversight investigation, but you know what they're not asking for?
Those kind of comments, and he knows that. Gentleman's recognized.
Now, the oversight committee is doing an investigation, but you know what they're not asking for? You know what you did not put in the rule to confirm that investigation? We're not asking for the documents that were used to open the investigation, who provided the information. They're not asking for witness statements, victim witness statements. They're not asking for recordings that may exist. They're not asking for any of the evidence that might include Donald Trump. And rather than acknowledge that you're just trying to cover up for Donald Trump's knowledge and involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein scheme, you're trying to accuse us of being interested. And there's one more point that I will say quickly. This conspiracy theory that you pushed for years is bogus. And when it comes out to the American people that it is bogus, then they will know that all of your other conspiracy theories are also bogus, and your credibility is nil. And I yield back.
It's about what kind of justice system America still has left. Senator Cory Booker didn't waste a second. He wasn't there for headlines or sound bites. He wanted answers. He opened with a question that instantly froze the air in the room. 12 prosecutors, career professionals, had been fired, many tied to politically sensitive cases. Booker asked Patel if he knew a man named Brett Reynolds, one of those prosecutors. Patel's response? A casual shrug. Maybe, but it doesn't ring a bell. Booker leaned in and said it again, sharper this time. You're under oath. The repetition wasn't for Patel, it was for everyone watching. It was a signal that something deeper was happening, something far more dangerous than simple forgetfulness. The hearing wasn't about politics anymore. It was about power, who had it, who kept it, and who was willing to lie to protect it. Patel's words stumbled as Booker tightened the grip. He insisted he wasn't aware of any plans to punish or remove FBI agents tied to those cases. But his tone lacked conviction. Each sentence sounded like it had been rehearsed, each phrase wrapped in legal caution. Booker wasn't fooled. He pressed harder. Yes or no, Director? Are you aware of any discussions to punish agents? Patel tried again. To the best of my recollection, no. That phrase, so common in Washington, might sound harmless, but everyone in the room knew what it meant. It's the language people use when they want deniability. It's not a memory problem. It's a strategy. Booker wasn't asking about policy. He was testing Patel's honesty. Was this new FBI about enforcing the law or protecting the people who broke it? Then the questioning turned personal. Booker brought up something Patel couldn't talk his way out of, his immunity deal. Not long ago, Patel had been subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury. He had initially pled the Fifth, invoking his right against self-incrimination. That alone was shocking for someone who now leads the FBI. But then he testified, under immunity. To the average viewer, that might sound routine, but it's not. It means prosecutors believed Patel had critical information. They believed he knew something they needed badly enough to protect him legally, just to make him talk. Booker walked him through it in plain English. Witnesses aren't bound to secrecy, Booker said. Only jurors and prosecutors are. You could tell us everything you said to that grand jury, right here, right now. Patel shifted in his seat. His answer was predictable. I've asked for my testimony to be released. But that wasn't the question. The truth was simple. He could speak freely. He chose not to. That silence spoke louder than anything else. Think about it. The director of the FBI, sworn to protect truth and justice, sitting under oath and dodging questions about his own sworn testimony. That's not caution, it's concealment. And Booker knew it. Every time Patel hesitated, every time he said, to the best of my recollection, every time he deflected, it chipped away at the credibility of the man running the nation's most powerful investigative agency. Viewers watching could see it. You could almost feel the discomfort through the screen. The hearing wasn't just exposing a man, it was exposing a pattern of evasion, silence, and selective memory that Booker's patience was wearing thin. He cut through Patel's legal smokescreen with a simple, brutal question. Did you or did you not commit a crime? There was a pause, a long one. Patel finally said no, but his refusal to elaborate made it sound like a half-truth. If he did nothing wrong, why hide behind immunity? Why keep his own testimony a secret when the law clearly allowed him to speak? The tension in the room turned electric. For Booker, this wasn't about personal embarrassment. It was about institutional trust. Because when someone with Patel's history is now responsible for deciding who gets investigated, who gets immunity, and who gets punished, every evasive answer feels like a threat to the rule of law itself. Booker then dropped another bombshell. He reminded Patel of his own past statements about removing thousands of FBI personnel and even shutting down the Hoover Building. Patel had brushed it off before his talk of reform, but Booker reframed it in chilling terms. You don't clean up corruption by firing the people who investigate it, Booker said. The implication was clear. This wasn't reform, it was a purge. A slow, quiet cleansing of career officials replaced by loyal operatives. Patel denied having a list of names. He denied making promises. But Booker's eyes didn't move. Are you certain? He asked. Patel's voice wavered. To the best of my recollection, the same line again. The same escape hatch. And at that point, Even people who didn't understand the politics could understand the truth. Patel wasn't protecting justice. He was protecting himself. As the questioning went on, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Every denial from Patel was technically correct, but morally empty. Every, "I don't recall," was a reminder that this wasn't about memory, it was about power. Booker was methodically building a record of contradictions, and Patel was giving him all the material he needed. Behind the legal jargon, the message was clear: loyalty had replaced accountability. And that's what Booker wanted the public to see. This wasn't just a confirmation hearing. It was a warning about what happens when truth becomes negotiable. Booker shifted gears. He stopped talking about individuals and started talking about institutions. When law enforcement turns into a political tool, he said, the consequences ripple far beyond one person. Imagine being an agent who has worked for decades, only to see colleagues reassigned or fired for doing their jobs too well. Imagine being a prosecutor told to stand down on a sensitive case because it might make the wrong people angry. That's how corruption doesn't just start, it spreads. Slowly, invisibly, until no one inside the system can tell where justice ends and politics begins. Fear replaces duty, Booker said. And once that happens, truth doesn't die loudly. It dies quietly. The line echoed like a warning bell. Patel sat stiff, emotionless, offering pre-packaged answers while Booker peeled away layer after layer of plausible deniability. The senator wasn't raising his voice anymore. He didn't need to. The facts were heavy enough on their own. He reminded Patel, and everyone watching, that when witnesses are given immunity, it's not an honor. It's a sign that prosecutors believe you had something to hide. And now, the man with that past controlled an entire agency built on the idea of accountability. It was a circle of irony so perfect, it felt scripted. What's especially haunting is the pattern. This same formula, build outrage, weaponize it, and bury it once it backfires, has repeated countless times in modern politics. The Epstein saga is just the most glaring example. And while the media moves on to the next headline, the Real story remains locked away, quite literally, in a vault of classified documents, sealed for reasons the public is never allowed to question. The power to decide which names matter and which don't has become the ultimate political weapon. That's why Goldman's confrontation struck such a nerve. He wasn't just talking to Comer. He was talking to everyone watching. Anyone who's ever wondered why some scandals seem to vanish overnight, while others are dragged out for years. His message was simple. If you only want the truth when it hurts your opponents, you don't care about justice, you care about control. And the Epstein files, once touted as the ultimate reckoning, have become a symbol of that control. The silence from Patel and Bondi after the hearing only deepened the suspicion. Patel, who'd once publicly promised a transparent process, hasn't offered a single update since. Bondi's office hasn't released a statement addressing Goldman's claims. And Comer? He's doubling down on investigations into everything except the one that started this debate. It's as if every key player understands one thing. The closer you get to the full truth, the more dangerous it becomes. And maybe that's the real takeaway. The Epstein case was never just about one man or one scandal. It was about how deep the machinery of secrecy runs when the stakes are high enough. Files that could reveal the darkest intersections of money, influence, and power are still being treated like political property. The cover-up isn't a rumor, it's a reflex. A learned behavior inside the system that ensures no one with real power ever faces the same scrutiny they demand of others. When Goldman called out Comer as a useful idiot, it wasn't just an insult. It was a diagnosis of how corruption survives. Useful idiots aren't necessarily evil. They're just willing participants in a game they think they're winning, not realizing they're protecting the very thing they claim to fight. And that's what makes this story so haunting. The people who once said, "Let the truth come out," are now the ones keeping the vault sealed. As the hearing wrapped up, the silence from the committee spoke louder than any denial could. Goldman's accusations were dismissed as partisan noise, but the facts he laid out remain uncontested. The investigation exists, but the documents remain hidden. The redactions continue. The Oversight Committee, supposedly tasked with transparency, refuses to ask the most obvious questions. It's not incompetence, it's coordination. A quiet, strategic decision to keep the truth just out of reach. And that brings us here. to a moment that forces every viewer to ask, what else are we not being told? What other truths are being redacted, reframed, or buried under ongoing investigation, labels designed to keep the public in the dark? If this is how one of the most high-profile scandals of the last decade is being handled, what does that say about every other case that never reaches the spotlight? There's a reason this moment matters. Because while names, parties, and politics change, the pattern doesn't. Misinformation, outrage, silence, repeat. It's the loop that keeps power protected and the public distracted. Goldman broke that loop for a few minutes in one hearing. But the real question is whether anyone will actually listen. The Epstein files may never be fully released, but the cover-up surrounding them has already told us more than those documents ever could. It's not about who's guilty. It's about who gets to decide what guilt looks like. And as long as that power remains unchecked, every new scandal will follow the same path: outrage, silence, and selective memory. If you've watched this far, you already understand why stories like this matter. Because truth doesn't die in darkness, it's buried in noise. And the only way to fight that is by paying attention, asking questions, and refusing to let silence win. So if you want more breakdowns like this, stories that cut through the spin and expose what's really happening behind closed doors, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a like. Because the more people who see what's being hidden, the harder it becomes to keep it buried.